Chapter 1. The Mouth of the Earth. The jungles of South Vietnam were alive in 1966, but not with peace. The thick canopy of trees muffled the sounds of helicopters overhead, and every step through the tangled roots and wet soil felt like walking into a trap. For the American soldiers patrolling near the outskirts of Saigon, the war was no longer about visible battle lines. It was about shadows, whispers, and enemies who disappeared into the earth itself. The squad moved cautiously, rifles raised, their boots sinking into damp ground. Then one soldier froze. His eyes had caught something unnatural in the dirt. At first, it looked like no more than a narrow hole, just wide enough for a man's shoulders. A hole that an ordinary passerby might ignore, dismissing it as the den of some forest animal. But the men here knew better. The officer knelt, brushing away the leaves that had been carefully scattered to disguise the opening. His voice dropped to a near whisper. "It's a Cu Chi tunnel." The name alone carried a weight heavier than their gear. The Cu Chi tunnels were infamous even among hardened fighters. Beneath the soil stretched a hidden labyrinth, hundreds of miles of interwoven passageways, dug by hand, reinforced with bamboo, and engineered with deadly ingenuity. To the Viet Cong, it was home, hospital, supply line, and fortress. To the Americans, it was a nightmare. The men glanced at one another, and an unease spread through the group. The stories were endless. Soldiers who had entered these tunnels and never returned. Traps buried inside, wooden spikes coated in poison, doors rigged to explosives, or pits that swallowed a man whole. Worse still, the tunnels themselves seemed alive with silence, airless, narrow, pressing against the body until panic clawed at the mind, yet someone had to go in. That task fell to the tunnel rats, volunteers trained for this exact purpose. Shorter men, chosen for their size, courage, and ability to crawl through the suffocating black corridors. They carried little: a flashlight, a pistol, sometimes a knife. No heavy packs, no room for hesitation. Inside the tunnels, the war was fought hand to hand, inch by inch. One such man stepped forward. His face was young, though hardened by months of combat. He holstered his pistol, wiped the sweat dripping from his brow, and dropped to his knees. He peered into the hole, shining, his flashlight downward. The beam vanished almost instantly, swallowed by the earth as if the darkness itself was alive. The air that drifted out was damp, musty, and strangely warm. It smelled of earth, mold, and something metallic. Blood, perhaps, though no one said. It allowed. The soldier took a deep breath, the last lungful of open air he might have for hours. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, he began to lower himself into the tunnel. The jungle above fell silent. The other men watched in tense stillness, their rifles ready, though they knew they were powerless to help him once he disappeared. Underground. Time stretched thin as the earth seemed to swallow him whole. Inside, the tunnel was no wider than his shoulders. The walls pressed against his body, and the ceiling was low enough that he had to crawl on his stomach. Roots clawed at his helmet. His flashlight cut a narrow cone through the dark, illuminating only a few feet ahead at a time. Every breath was labored, every sound amplified. The scratch of cloth against dirt, the drip of unseen water, the thud of his own heartbeat. The soldier knew what awaited him. Traps hidden in the soil, snakes set loose by the enemy, sudden dead ends designed to confuse and disorient. Worst of all, at any moment, a Viet Cong fighter could be crouched silently in the dark, waiting with nothing more than a knife. Above ground, the squad shifted uneasily. Minutes passed, stretching into 10, then 20. No sound came back from below. The opening remained still, silent, indifferent, as though the earth itself had sealed him inside, and that was the fear that haunted every soldier in Vietnam. To step into a Cu Chi tunnel was to enter another world, one where the rules of war no longer applied. A world of silence, shadows, and secrets. It was the beginning of a story repeated countless times during the war. Men went down into the earth. Some came back with tales of horrors. Others never came back at all. Chapter 2. Into the black, the tunnel rat inched forward, his flashlight barely cutting through the suffocating blackness. The beam shook with every movement of his trembling hands. Dirt pressed against his chest and back, and the air grew hotter, thicker, harder to breathe. The deeper he went, the more the surface world seemed like a dream, a place of open sky and air he could never again take for granted. Behind him, the entrance was gone, swallowed by the earth. If he turned his head, there was only darkness. Ahead of him, darkness too. The beam of his torch seemed weaker, as though the earth itself was absorbing the light. Every soldier who crawled into Ku Chi tunnels described the same feeling, the sensation of trespassing into another world. It wasn't just physical claustrophobia, it was a psychological attack. The silence was alive. Every drip of water, every scuttle of unseen insects against the mud sounded deafening. He paused. The tunnel forked. To the left, a narrow path, slanted downward, where his flashlight caught the gleam of bamboo stakes protruding from the walls. To the right, the tunnel curved out of sight, a faint smell of smoke drifting toward him. The Viet Cong often cooked underground, using cleverly hidden vents that released smoke far away from their true positions. That faint smell meant something chilling. The enemy was not far. Slowly he moved right. His hands brushed the walls, feeling the damp clay and the faint ridges where other hands had carved these passages over years of patient digging. The Ku. Chi tunnels weren't random holes in the ground. They were a city, a hidden civilization. They had command centers, sleeping quarters, weapon caches, even hospitals where wounded fighters were treated beneath the soil. The man crawling through them now was inside a secret empire. Then a sound. It was faint, but unmistakable. A whisper of movement, the shuffle of bare feet against dirt, somewhere ahead in the dark. He froze, his breath caught in his throat. His heart slammed against his ribs so loudly he feared it would give him away. His training screamed, "Don't move! Listen!" For a full minute he lay there, pressed flat against the tunnel floor, his pistol ready. The sound came again, a scuff, then silence. Whoever or whatever was ahead was waiting, just as he was. The tunnel rat knew the rules of this underground war. The Viet Cong fighters who lived in these tunnels were patient hunters. They could sit silently for hours, a knife in hand, waiting for the moment an intruder grew careless. Sometimes American soldiers reported finding nothing but abandoned tunnels. Other times they found sudden death, an enemy that seemed to appear out of the soil itself. He forced himself forward, inch by inch. Sweat poured into his eyes, stinging, but he dared not wipe it away. His flashlight beam trembled as it illuminated. Crude markings on the walls, symbols scratched into the clay, perhaps codes for the fighters who navigated here daily. Then his hand brushed something unnatural. A wooden panel set into the dirt. A trap door. His chest tightened. Many of these doors led to side chambers where Viet Cong fighters hid. Some were safe. Others were wired with grenades. He held his breath and shifted his flashlight, the beam revealing faint fingerprints in the mud near the panel, fresh ones. Above ground, his unit waited, unaware of the silent battle taking place beneath their boots. They shifted nervously, eyes on the hole in the ground, but no sound came back. For them, time stretched endlessly, each minute heavier than the last. Below, the tunnel rat had reached the edge of something larger. The air grew warmer, and the tunnel opened into a chamber just ahead. The faint smell of smoke was stronger now. The soldier tightened his grip on his pistol, raised his flashlight, and crawled forward. The beam struck a shape. It wasn't a wall. It wasn't a root. It was a human face, watching him from the darkness. Chapter 3. Eyes in the dark. The soldier's light froze on the face. For a heartbeat, neither man moved. The tunnel rat's hand tightened on the grip of his pistol, but he did not fire. The face before him was motionless, unblinking, the whites of the eyes reflecting his trembling flashlight. Was it a trick of the mind? A carving? A corpse left as a warning? Then it blinked. The air seemed to collapse around him. His lungs burned as panic surged through his veins. This was no ghost. It was a Viet Cong fighter, crouched in the darkness, inches away. The man lunged. The tunnel rat fired instinctively. The shot exploded in the confined space, deafening, choking the air with gunpowder. His flashlight flickered wildly, throwing shadows against the clay walls. The figure in front of him dropped back into the chamber, vanishing into the black void. Adrenaline took over. He crawled forward, heart slamming, pistol raised. The chamber ahead widened into a low, earthen room supported by crude wooden beams. The stench of sweat and smoke filled the space. A smoldering fire in a clay pot glowed faintly in one corner, its smoke drawn away by an almost invisible vent shaft. But the fighter was gone. Somewhere in this underground maze, he had slipped away. The tunnel rat knew he could be anywhere. Behind one of the hidden doors, down a side passage, or waiting silently for another chance to strike. The chamber itself told its own story. Against the walls, he saw baskets of rice, ammunition boxes, and canteens. Crude hammocks hung from bamboo pegs. This wasn't just a tunnel, it was someone's home, a base of operations deep beneath the earth. Here, fighters slept, ate, planned attacks, and disappeared back into the soil before the Americans even knew where they had come from. The tunnel rat's flashlight caught another detail. Small tunnels leading away from the chamber, some barely large enough for a child to crawl through. The Viet Cong often used women and teenagers in these tunnels, carrying supplies or messages through spaces no adult soldier could follow. This was a living network, more vast than anything the Americans above could imagine. He crouched low, ears straining in the suffocating silence. A drop of water fell from the ceiling, echoing like a drum in the stillness. His breath came ragged, loud to his own ears. He knew every second he remained here increased the risk. At any moment, he could trigger a hidden trap, tripwires, spiked pits, or explosives waiting for intruders like him. Then he saw it, a set of fresh footprints in the clay leading down one of the smaller passages. Bare feet, recently made. The fighter he had seen was close. He hesitated. The narrow passage was tighter than the one he had crawled through before. It curved sharply, disappearing into blackness. If he followed, there would be no retreat, no turning back. The walls would close in until he was one with the earth itself. Above ground, the squad shifted anxiously. One man checked his watch. 40 minutes had passed since their comrade disappeared below. Still no sound, no signal, nothing but the eerie quiet of the jungle. Each of them imagined what might be happening beneath their boots, though none dared speak it aloud. Down below, the tunnel rat steadied himself. His hand brushed the wall for balance. The clay was warm, damp, alive with the vibrations of unseen movement. Somewhere ahead, a fighter crouched in the darkness, waiting. The soldier exhaled, whispered a silent prayer, and crawled forward into the passage. His flashlight beam quivered as he entered the black throat of the earth, chasing shadows deeper into the hidden world. The chamber behind him disappeared, swallowed by darkness, and with every inch he moved, he felt the presence of unseen eyes watching him, following him, waiting for the right moment to strike. Chapter 4. The Chamber of Death. The tunnel rat crawled forward, the narrow passage squeezing around his body like the ribs of a giant beast. His flashlight beam danced over the clay walls, revealing claw, marks where hands had scraped and dug, shaping the earth into corridors. The footprints he followed were still fresh. His pulse quickened. The silence broke. A whisper of air, a faint hiss. And then something moved. A knife slashed from the dark. The yes blade missed his face by inches, striking the dirt wall with a dull thud. He fired his pistol instinctively, the blast deafening in the confined tunnel. The flash blinded him, and for a split second he saw a shadow leap away into another side hole, gone as quickly as it appeared. The soldier's ears rang. His lungs burned from the smoke. He pushed forward, adrenaline flooding his veins. He knew the Viet Cong fighter wasn't running. He was luring him deeper. That was how the tunnels worked. Every curve, every hidden trap, designed to disorient and divide. The passage suddenly opened into another chamber. This one was larger than the last, with low ceilings supported by thick bamboo poles. The air was hotter here, almost suffocating, filled with the lingering scent of human presence. Shadows clung to the corners. His flashlight caught glimpses. Wooden crates marked with faded Russian lettering, AK-47 rifles stacked against the wall, and sacks of rice piled neatly in rows. But it was the floor that made his blood run cold. At the center of the chamber was a pit, covered with thin bamboo slats and a scattering of dirt. He recognized it instantly, a punji pit. The cover was meant to collapse under a man's weight, dropping him onto sharpened bamboo spikes coated in poison or excrement. One wrong step, and the tunnel would claim him forever. He froze, his breath caught in his throat. His flashlight quivered across the pit, and there it was. A flicker of movement. Eyes glinting back at him from the other side. The Viet Cong fighter was waiting. The man was small, wiry, his bare chest streaked with mud to blend with the earth. In his hand gleamed a knife, curved and wicked. His face was calm, almost expressionless, as though he were part of the soil itself. Neither man moved. The tunnel rat knew he had only seconds. If he fired, the blast might collapse the fragile chamber. If he lunged forward, the punji pit would claim him. If he retreated, he would be hunted through the tunnels until exhaustion claimed him. The Viet Cong fighter crouched low, ready to spring. His knife caught the beam of the flashlight, a sudden glimmer in the dark. The air between them thickened, with the weight of two men locked in a silent, deadly standoff beneath the earth. Then, suddenly, a sound behind him. The tunnel rat twisted his head, flashlight swinging wildly. The narrow passage he had crawled through was no longer empty. Another figure crouched there, blocking the way back. Another fighter. The soldier's chest tightened. His pistol shook in his hand. The realization struck him with brutal clarity. He wasn't hunting them. He had been led here. The Cu Chi tunnels weren't random passages. They were traps. Living traps. And now, with enemies in front and behind, the earth itself had closed around him. Above ground, the squad still waited, unaware that beneath their feet, their comrade was caught in a silent, deadly circle. The jungle around them seemed calm, but beneath the soil, a life-or-death struggle had begun. The tunnel rat's finger tightened on the trigger. The first move would decide everything. Chapter 5. The Underground Battle. The tunnel rat's hand trembled as he aimed his pistol. In the tight chamber, the smallest movement mattered. One wrong twitch could mean falling into the punji pit beneath him or giving the Viet Cong fighter the opening he needed. The enemy across the pit crouched like a predator, knife glinting in the shaky beam of the flashlight. His chest rose and fell slowly, his breathing calm. He was home here. These tunnels were his territory, carved by his people, defended with his patience. Behind the American, the second fighter shifted. The scrape of bare feet against the clay. Floor echoed like thunder in the suffocating silence. The tunnel rat realized the full horror. He was cornered. Every instinct screamed to fire, but he knew what that meant. In the confined chamber, one gunshot could bring the ceiling down, burying all of them alive. These tunnels had collapsed before. earth crushing lungs, choking men in seconds. Death here wasn't always quick. Sometimes it was slow, suffocating, silent. The soldier steadied his breathing. His pistol pointed at the fighter in front, but his mind was already racing, calculating. He could not shoot. He had to move. Then it happened. The Viet Cong across the pit sprang forward with terrifying speed. His body was wiry but strong, a blur, in the darkness. The tunnel rat fired anyway, one desperate shot. The explosion cracked the chamber like thunder, dirt raining from the ceiling. The bullet struck the beam of the bamboo support, splintering it, but not the man. The fighter landed just short of the pit, knife slashing. The soldier rolled sideways, his shoulder slamming into the mud wall, pistol knocked from his grip. The flashlight clattered to the ground, its beam spinning, throwing wild shadows across the chamber. The world became chaos. The second fighter lunged from behind, tackling the American to the ground. The weight crushed his chest, squeezing the air from his lungs. He twisted, feeling the edge of the punji pit just inches from his side. One slip, one wrong move, and he would be impaled alive. His hand scrabbled through the dirt, searching blindly. Fingers closed around something hard. The pistol. He swung it back, smashing the butt into the side of the attacker's head. The man grunted, recoiling. The tunnel rat gasped for air, rolling free, mud caking his face and hands. His flashlight beam tilted upward, illuminating the chamber's low ceiling, cracks spreading like veins from where his shot had hit. The chamber would not hold for long. The fighter with the knife advanced again, crawling low, his face set in grim silence. The other, dazed but not beaten, was already rising. The American soldier's chest heaved. His options narrowed to one, fight for every breath. He lunged. His pistol fired again, the blast deafening, the chamber shuddering. The bullet struck the second fighter in the shoulder, spinning him back against the wall with a cry that broke the silence. But there was no time to finish him. The knife wielder was already on him, the blade slashing in the dark. The two men collided, rolling across the floor. The knife scraped against the soldier's vest, cutting into the fabric. The smell of sweat, blood, and smoke thickened in the air. Their bodies slammed dangerously close to the punji pit, the cover creaking under their weight. The soldier's hand clamped around the fighter's wrist, forcing the knife away. Their faces were inches apart, eyes locked, one fueled by survival, the other by conviction. The Viet Cong's teeth were gritted, his muscles coiled with the strength of a man defending his homeland. The tunnel shook again. Dirt fell like rain. The chamber was collapsing. With a final surge of desperation, the soldier twisted, wrenching the knife free. He drove the hilt into the fighter's temple. The man's body went limp, dropping against the dirt floor. The silence that followed was broken only by the soldier's ragged breathing. His hands shook, his heart thundered. One fighter down, the other wounded, but the chamber itself was groaning, threatening to entomb them all. He snatched up his flashlight, the beam cutting through the dust. His eyes darted to the side passage leading out. Narrow, black, unwelcoming, but his only chance. Behind him, the wounded fighter stirred, blood streaking his shoulder. Ahead, the tunnel yawned open like the throat of the earth, waiting to swallow him deeper. The soldier hesitated only a moment. Then he crawled forward into the darkness, leaving behind the groaning chamber, the pit, and the bodies. But as he disappeared, he heard it, faint voices in the tunnels ahead. More of them. The earth was alive with enemies, and he was still alone. Chapter 6. The Hidden City. Beneath. The tunnel rat's breathing was ragged as he crawled forward, every muscle aching, every nerve on fire. The chamber behind him groaned on the verge of collapse, but he dared not look back. All he had was the narrow path ahead, the earth pressing in on both sides, his flashlight beam cutting a trembling line through the suffocating dark. Minutes bled into each other. The tunnels twisted and turned without logic, designed to confuse intruders, to trap them in endless circles. Sometimes they slanted upward, giving the illusion of escape, only to plunge deeper into the bowels of the earth. Sweat streamed into his eyes, mud smeared across his face and arms. His body felt like it was being swallowed alive. Then, suddenly, the air changed. It grew cooler, with a faint draft brushing against his skin. His ears picked up the distant sound of something he hadn't expected. Voices, human voices, low and muffled, echoing through the clay like whispers carried by the earth itself. He slowed, inching forward silently. His flashlight beam revealed a new opening ahead, a slanted drop leading into a larger space. Carefully, he slid down, pistol ready, his chest pounding. What he saw stole the breath from his lungs. The chamber before him was vast compared to the cramped tunnels he had crawled through. Bamboo supports lined the walls, holding the ceiling steady. Oil lamps flickered dimly, their weak glow casting long shadows. And within that glow, he saw life. Men and women moved silently, their bare feet padding against the packed earth. Some carried baskets of rice, others small crates of ammunition. In one corner, a makeshift medical station was set up. A young woman dressed in black tended to a wounded fighter, wrapping his bleeding leg with strips of cloth. In another corner, maps were spread across the dirt floor, marked with lines and notes written in chalk. It was a village, a city, hidden beneath the soil. The soldier crouched low, heart pounding. He had stumbled into the deeper layer of the Cu Chi tunnels, the true stronghold. Here, the Viet Cong didn't just fight. They lived. They organized. They planned the war itself. The sight was staggering. He had heard rumors, but to see it with his own eyes was something else entirely. He could almost forget he was underground. The chamber buzzed with quiet efficiency, a rhythm of survival. There were no luxuries, no comforts, only determination, carved into every face. Then he saw something that froze him. At the far end of the chamber, a small group of men huddled near a wooden cage. Inside were two figures, American soldiers, prisoners. Their uniforms were torn, their faces gaunt, eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. One leaned against the bars, too weak to sit upright. The other clutched his arm, blood seeping through a makeshift bandage. The tunnel rat's chest tightened. He wasn't the first man to come down here. Others had been caught, dragged into the underground labyrinth, swallowed whole by the earth. And now, he was looking at the living proof. One of the prisoners looked up suddenly, eyes locking onto him through the shadows. His lips parted, whispering something too faint to hear. The soldier felt the weight of it, a silent plea, a warning, but he couldn't move. Not yet. Every step forward could expose him. Around the chamber, at least a dozen Viet Cong fighters moved in and out of side passages. Some sat with rifles, across their knees, their eyes scanning the room. Others carried baskets of soil, dumping them into hidden shafts that carried the dirt away to disguise their digging. The tunnel rat crouched, trapped between instinct and duty. He could retreat, try to find his way back to the surface before he was discovered. Or he could risk everything to reach the prisoners, to confirm what he now knew, that the enemy's underground empire was not just myth. It was real, alive, and stronger than anyone above ground understood. Then the voices grew louder. A man entered the chamber, his presence commanding immediate attention. The fighters turned toward him with respect. He was older, his black uniform pressed, his demeanor calm but firm. His eyes scanned the room, sharp and calculating. This was no ordinary fighter. This was a commander. The tunnel rat's blood ran cold. He was standing in the heart of the Cu Chi resistance, staring at the very leaders orchestrating the war from beneath the jungle floor. And he was utterly alone. The prisoners shifted in their cage, their eyes fixed on him, silently begging. The commander's voice rang out in Vietnamese, calm but decisive. Orders were being given, plans made, raids, ambushes, the next moves of a war that had swallowed thousands of lives. The tunnel rat's hand tightened around his pistol. His mind raced. Should he risk exposure, try to rescue the men, or remain in the shadows to carry this knowledge back to the surface? Every second that passed pulled him deeper into the heart of the enemy's world, deeper into a story few would ever believe. And then the commander's head turned. The oil lamp flickered. The soldier realized, too late, that the shadows no longer hid him. Eyes locked onto his. The chamber erupted in shouts. Chapter 7. The Chase Beneath the Earth. The shout tore through the chamber like a gunshot. Dozens of Viet Cong fighters whipped around, their eyes locking onto the shadow crouched near the wall. The tunnel rat's blood surged with panic. He had been seen. His cover was gone. The commander barked orders in sharp Vietnamese. Within seconds, rifles were raised, knives drawn, feet pounding against the clay floor. The underground village, transformed from quiet industry to a hunting pack, every man focused on him. The tunnel rat fired. The shot cracked through the chamber, the muzzle flash blinding in the dim lamplight. One fighter dropped, clutching his chest. The others surged forward. Chaos erupted. The prisoners in the cage shouted hoarsely, their voices filled with desperation. One slammed his fists against the bamboo bars, screaming, "Get out! Run! Don't let them take you!" The tunnel rat sprinted toward a side passage, his flashlight beam swinging wildly. The narrow corridor yawned open like a throat, and he dove inside, crawling furiously on hands and knees. Behind him, the echo of pursuit filled the tunnel. Boots, pounding, voices shouting, bullets ricocheting against clay walls. The earth seemed to close in tighter. Dirt rained from the ceiling as stray shots cracked overhead. His breath rasped in his throat, every inhale filled with dust. He wriggled forward, dragging his body through a shaft barely wide enough to move. Sweat slicked his skin, mud clung to his clothes, and his pistol felt heavy in his trembling hand. The fighters were gaining. Their voices grew louder, closer. He could hear the scrape of fingernails against dirt, the metallic click of rifles being reloaded. Then his flashlight beam caught something ahead, an intersection. The tunnel split into 3 directions, left, right, and straight ahead, all identical. His chest tightened. This was what the tunnels were designed for. Labyrinths, built to confuse, to trap. Choose wrong. And he would crawl straight into another chamber full of waiting enemies. He forced himself to listen, to feel. The right tunnel carried faint vibrations, footsteps. They were trying to cut him off. The left smelled faintly of smoke, likely leading back toward the central chamber. That left only one option, forward. He crawled faster, elbows scraping raw against the dirt, his pistol clenched in one muddy hand. The tunnel sloped downward, colder, damper. He almost slipped in the mud as the passage widened slightly. Then, suddenly, he stopped short. Ahead of him was a pit. A wide shaft dropped into darkness, its bottom invisible. A ventilation shaft, maybe. Or a trap. His flashlight beam revealed bamboo stakes lining the sides, sharpened and gleaming. To fall in would mean death. Shouts behind him. The fighters were nearly upon him. He had no time to think. His eyes darted around desperately. To the side of the shaft, a narrow ledge of clay jutted out, just wide enough for his body. He pressed, himself against it, inching sideways, his boots scraping the wall. Dirt crumbled beneath him, tumbling into the pit. He didn't dare look down. One slip, and he would vanish into the spikes below. A shadow appeared at the far end of the shaft. A fighter crawled into view, eyes burning, rifle raised. The tunnel rat froze. He couldn't lift his pistol without losing balance. His only weapon was silence. The fighter advanced slowly, not yet seeing him pressed flat against the wall. His flashlight beam danced over the shaft, illuminating the pit. Just as the fighter leaned forward to check the drop, the tunnel rat struck. He shoved with both hands. The fighter's scream echoed down the shaft as his body fell, striking the stakes below with a sickening thud. Silence followed. The tunnel rat's chest heaved, his stomach twisted with the brutal reality. But he had no choice. He scrambled past the shaft, heart hammering, and crawled deeper into the passage. Behind him, the shouts grew angrier, closer. They had heard the scream. The chase was not over. Minutes stretched like hours. His arms trembled, his breath tore from his lungs. At last, he saw it. A faint glow ahead. Not firelight, not lamps. Something softer. Daylight. He crawled faster, clawing through the dirt, his body shaking with desperation. The tunnel sloped upward, widening until he could almost crouch. Roots tangled overhead. The glow grew brighter. Fresh air kissed his face. He burst out of the ground like a drowning man breaking the surface of the sea. Jungle, sunlight, open sky. He rolled onto the grass, gasping, blinking against the blinding brightness. The smell of fresh air filled his lungs, dizzying after hours of suffocating earth. But the jungle was not silent. Behind him, the tunnel mouth still gaped. Voices echoed within, shouting, relentless. They were coming, and the realization struck him with brutal clarity. The surface was no safer than the dark. Chapter 8. The Jungle Hunt. The sunlight blinded him as he sprawled in the grass, lungs heaving like bellows. For a few precious seconds, he lay motionless, the warmth of open air on his skin feeling unreal after hours in the earth's choking grip. He wanted to believe he was free. Then the voices came. Shouts echoed from the tunnel behind him, urgent and sharp. The enemy was still on his trail. They weren't just below him now, they were coming up. He rolled to his knees, pistol raised, scanning the jungle. It was quiet. Too quiet. The Kuchi jungle had its own kind of silence. A predator's silence. Birds that had been chirping only moments ago had vanished. The thick canopy above blocked much of the sunlight, turning the ground into a maze of shadows. Roots coiled across the soil like snakes, and every bush seemed to conceal eyes. He staggered forward, pushing into the undergrowth. Each step was heavy, his muscles weak from crawling miles underground. His clothes were soaked with sweat, smeared with mud, his throat raw from breathing dust. Still, he forced himself onward, away from the open tunnel mouth, away from the death he had barely escaped. A crack, a twig snapped behind him. He spun, pistol raised. Nothing, only the jungle breathing around him. But he knew he wasn't alone. The Viet Cong were masters of this terrain. They knew every path, every tree, every hidden snare. They could vanish into the leaves as easily as they vanished into the tunnels. The soldier's heart pounded. On the surface, he was as lost as he had been underground. He pushed deeper, ducking under low branches, his boots sinking into soft mud. Sweat poured into his eyes, stinging. His flashlight was gone, left somewhere in the tunnels. But in the daylight, it didn't matter. His pistol felt heavy, but it was all he had. Then, a whistle. Short, sharp, deliberate. The jungle answered with another whistle, farther away. They were signaling to each other. He was surrounded. Panic surged, but he shoved it down. Training screamed at him, "Stay moving! Don't stop!" He veered left, crashing through thick ferns. His chest burned, his legs screamed, but he kept running. A crack split the air. A bullet whipped past his ear, slamming into a tree trunk ahead of him. Splinters exploded into his face. He dropped low, heart hammering, and scrambled into the brush. Another shot followed, closer this time. They weren't trying to kill him outright. They were hurting him. The realization chilled him. This was the same tactic as the tunnels. Control the ground, guide the prey, box him in. Only now the jungle itself was the trap. He forced his way through the brush until he stumbled into a small clearing. The air was thick, humid, buzzing with insects. For a moment, the silence returned. No gunfire, no footsteps, just his own gasping breaths. Then he saw it, bare footprints in the mud, dozens of them, fresh. Leading out of the clearing, circling it, vanishing into the undergrowth. He froze. The jungle exploded around him. Shadows rose from the grass, from the trees, from the earth itself. Viet Cong fighters burst into the clearing, rifles raised, faces smeared with mud and leaves. They had been waiting for him, hiding in plain sight. The tunnel rat fired wildly, his pistol cracking 3 times. One fighter fell, another staggered back, but the others surged forward. Bullets tore through the air, leaves shredding, bark splintering. He dove behind a fallen log, mud flying. The jungle roared with gunfire. Birds shrieked and took flight, the canopy alive with chaos. The soldier's pistol clicked empty. His heart sank. He was out. The fighters closed in, their shouts fierce, triumphant. He pressed against the log, hands trembling, mind racing. He had survived the tunnels. But here in the open, surrounded, he was just as trapped. Then, faintly through the chaos, he heard it, the distant thump of rotor blades. A helicopter. Hope surged like fire in his chest, but so did fear. Would it reach him in time, or would the jungle swallow him just as the earth had nearly done below? Chapter 9. Blades in the sky. The thump of rotor blades grew louder, shaking the treetops. The tunnel rat's chest surged with desperate hope. Rescue. The one word that meant salvation. But hope in Vietnam was never simple. The jungle around him erupted with even more urgency. The Viet Cong fighters shouted over the noise, rifles snapping upward toward the sound of the helicopter. Their eyes burned with determination. He would not escape, not after what he had seen, not after what he had survived underground. The soldier pressed lower against the fallen log, the vibrations of gunfire rattling the earth. He dared a glance upward. Through gaps in the canopy, sunlight glared off the belly of a UH-1 Huey helicopter as it skimmed the treetops, its blades chopping the air with mechanical fury. It was circling, searching. "Here! Over here!" he roared, his voice shredded from dust and smoke. He waved his arms, mud-smeared, bloodied, frantic. For a split second, he thought the pilot saw him. Then the Huey banked hard, avoiding bursts of tracer fire that streaked upward like angry red lines. The jungle exploded. In chaos, Viet Cong rifles rattled as they poured bullets into the sky. The Huey answered, its side door opening to unleash the stutter of an M60 machine gun. Branches shredded, leaves rained down like green confetti, the jungle screaming with steel. The soldier used the distraction. He broke from cover, sprinting across the clearing, lungs burning. Mud sucked at his boots, but adrenaline dragged him forward. Behind him, shouts erupted, fighters giving chase. Bullets cracked past him, slicing the air, spitting dirt at his heels. The Huey circled lower, blades whipping the treetops, rotor wash flattening the grass. The noise was deafening, a hurricane of steel and wind. The side gunner leaned out, waving frantically, trying to spot him through the smoke of battle. Another burst of fire tore through the clearing. The soldier dove behind a tree, bark exploding into splinters around him. He checked his pistol, empty. His knife was all that remained. He clenched it, chest heaving, sweat and mud dripping into his eyes. The Viet Cong fighters advanced in a wide arc, pushing him toward the center of the clearing. They didn't just want him dead, they wanted him captured. His knowledge of the tunnels of what he had seen below was too valuable to waste on a bullet. One of them shouted in English, broken but clear, "Drop weapon! Hands up! You live!" His grip tightened on the knife. Surrender meant torture, information dragged out of him until death was a mercy. He had seen what capture meant. The prisoners he left behind still screamed in his memory. He couldn't let that be his fate. The Huey swooped lower. The skid of the helicopter almost brushed the treetops now, rotor wash tearing leaves from branches in violent gusts. The gunner opened fire again, carving lines of fire into the jungle. 2 Viet Cong dropped, others scattered, but still they pushed forward, relentless. The soldier made his choice. He broke cover again, sprinting through mud and roots, waving both arms toward the hovering Huey. His legs screamed, his vision blurred, but the promise of escape pulled him forward. The Huey's skid dipped low, almost within reach. The gunner leaned out, shouting, "Come on! Jump!" He leapt. For a heartbeat, he was airborne, weightless between earth and sky. His hand caught the cold steel of the skid, fingers slipping on mud. The downdraft nearly tore him loose, rotor wash howling in his ears. But the gunner grabbed his arm, hauling with every ounce of strength. Below him, the Viet Cong unleashed a storm. Bullets shredded the grass where he had stood seconds before. Tracers streaked past, dangerously close. The jungle floor blurred. Beneath him, as the Huey tilted, rising, pulling him into the sky. But just as his boots cleared the treetops, he felt it. An impact. A burning, searing pain tore through his side. A bullet had found him. His grip faltered. His vision swam. The world tilted between sky and earth. The gunner screamed, holding on tighter, refusing to let him fall. Blood soaked his shirt, dripping into the wind. Below, the jungle seemed endless, hungry. The fighters stared upward, their rifles still firing, their shouts drowned by the roar of blades. The soldier's body sagged, heavy, his breath shallow. He was half in the helicopter, half out, caught between salvation and oblivion. The Huey banked hard, engines screaming, dragging him away from the clearing, away from the jungle that had nearly consumed him. But in his mind, the tunnels still whispered. The darkness, the cages, the prisoners left behind. Even as the jungle shrank beneath him, he knew the war had not let him go. Not yet. Chapter 10. The Shadows That Followed. The Huey roared over the jungle, its blades tearing at the sky. The soldier lay half in, half out of the doorway, his body slick with blood, his vision clouded. The gunner and another crewman hauled him inside, dragging him onto the metal floor. For a moment he was too numb to feel anything. The steel was cold against his back, vibrating with the helicopter's shudder. Above him, the sky stretched open, endless and blue, a shocking sight after hours of crawling in black earth. He sucked in a ragged breath, the air sharp and clean compared to the suffocating tunnels. But the relief was short-lived. The pain came next. Fire spread through his side where the bullet had torn into him. His hands clutched at the wound, warm blood soaking through his fingers. A medic leaned over, pressing bandages hard against the bleeding. The soldier groaned, his body jerking from the pressure. "Stay with me!" the medic shouted, his voice muffled by the roar of blades. "You're not done yet! You're not going back under!" The words hit him harder than the bandages. Not going back under. The tunnels. Even in the helicopter's thundering noise, he could still hear them. The creaks, the whispers, the faint drip of unseen water in the blackness. His mind refused to leave them behind. He turned his head, looking through the open door. Below, the jungle stretched in every direction, a vast green sea broken only by shadows. Somewhere down there, the tunnels twisted on, endless, crawling, with fighters and prisoners. Men were still trapped in cages, chained in the dark, waiting for a rescue that might never come. His chest heaved. Guilt stabbed at him deeper than the bullet. He had survived, but he hadn't saved them. He could still see their faces, eyes hollow with despair, hands reaching through bamboo bars as he crawled past. Their cries seemed louder now than the helicopter engines, as if they were still calling his name. The Huey banked toward base, leaving the jungle behind. But the soldier's mind was still there. Every vibration of the helicopter floor felt like the earth pressing in around him again. Every shadow in the corners of his vision became a Viet Cong fighter lurking in the dark. The medic spoke again, voice urgent, but fading in and out. The soldier's eyelids grew heavy. He felt himself slipping, not just into unconsciousness, but back into the tunnels. The stench of mud, the hiss of insects, the choking silence, all of it waiting for him in his dreams. Hours later, when the helicopter touched down at a field hospital, he was still alive. Bandages covered his side, morphine dulled his pain. And for the first time in days, he lay on a clean bed. Nurses moved around him, voices soft, light flooding the room, but even here, in safety, he couldn't shake it. When he closed his eyes, he wasn't in the hospital. He was back underground, crawling, searching, surrounded by traps and shadows. The tunnels had marked him, carved themselves into his mind. Men could leave the Cu Chi tunnels, but the Cu Chi tunnels never left them. That was the truth whispered among survivors, the real answer to the question. What happened to the men who entered the tunnels? Some died in the dark, some were captured and never seen again. And the few who crawled back into the light carried the darkness with them forever.